Has Puffy ever been in a coma? Has anything happened to him?
That Kim had made a 911 call at 2:15 that morning. And I don't know what happened in the 911 call.
We once thought Sean, Diddy, Combs glided through life like a modern-day Midas, turning beats into gold and controversy into free publicity. Today, that glow feels more like the glare of a police spotlight. And we can't look away. Everywhere we turn, there's another whispered tale, another late-night leak, another voice insisting the music mogul's triumphant legend was stitched together with fear and favors. We hear of a vault of secrets buried beneath penthouse floors, of confidants paid to forget what they saw, of rivals who suddenly vanished from the charts and from the world. His timeline now feels less like a victory lap and more like a maze of backrooms, closed-door deals, and muffled cries that somehow never reached the tabloids in time.
It's too many coincidences.
Too many.
We marvel at how the empire seemed indestructible. The fragrance lines, the fashion label, the talent shows, the yacht parties that made headlines simply by existing. Yet behind the velvet ropes, we keep spotting the same crooked shadows. Stories of intimidation, hush payments, and cryptic threats. How many of those glamorous red carpet smiles were frozen in place by non-disclosure pacts? How many promising careers stalled the moment an artist stopped obeying? And just how many unanswered questions can swirl around one man before his myth finally shatters? We linger on one question in particular. Was the heart of that empire powered not just by ambition, but by control so absolute, it silenced the people who once loved him most? Rumors claim studio sessions doubled as surveillance operations, that private jets were bugged like spy planes. The bodyguards kept 2 phones, one to answer, one to record. We are told that loyalty earned you diamonds, but disloyalty earned you a one-way ticket to obscurity, or worse, a tragic headline that left the public shrugging. Freak accident. Move on.
So she was the last person, according to her, to see Kim alive.
Which brings us to the moment the facade first cracked wide open. The sudden passing of Kim Porter in 2018. We can still hear the collective gasp when the news broke. Officially, doctors wrote lobar pneumonia, but almost overnight, the internet lit up with a darker script. We picture Kim, the longtime partner who knew Combs both onstage and off, reaching for her phone with fever-clumsy fingers, typing that haunting last message, "He got me." Was it a delirious coincidence or a warning we ignored until it was too late? Friends say Kim feared her home in Toluca Lake had ears in the walls and lenses in the light fixtures. She allegedly confessed to pals that whenever she lifted her laptop, the camera light flickered, even when no call was running. We imagine her tucking away a tiny flash drive somewhere the cleaners wouldn't look, a digital time bomb crammed with memoir pages, candid footage of A-listers in compromising poses, and audio diaries that mapped out every red flag she'd ever waved. According to one self-styled investigator, that drive landed on his desk months after Kim's funeral, filled with tear-stained paragraphs and date-stamped files labeled with names too famous to print.
Now, what was Kim's state? And in the report, didn't it say she had blood on the pillow and...
We wonder, what kept Kim from hitting send while she was still breathing? Did she hesitate out of fear for her children? Did she hope Combs might finally let his guard drop if she gave him one last chance? Or did someone pay a midnight visit, flipping through her drafts, pocketing whatever threatened the throne, and leaving the rest to gather dust in a court of public opinion that never convened? Even after the coroner stamped natural causes, the whispers only grew louder. Al B. Sure, once romantically linked to Kim, exploded on Instagram insisting her demise wasn't destiny but design. He called for an investigation, hinting that key devices vanished from Kim's bedroom the very night she lost consciousness. The twins, still teenagers, were left clinging to comforting memories while online sleuths pored over medical reports, screenshotting every lab result as if solving an algebra proof. Healthy lungs on Tuesday, collapsed lobe by Friday. Does that compute? Combs' legal team labeled the theories offensive. Still, we keep circling back to that shiver-inducing text. He got me. Those 3 words ring louder than the official autopsy ever could.
The case needs to be reopened, man. The case really needs to be reopened.
From Kim's tragedy, we rewind nearly 2 decades to another headline that reshaped lives, the Club New York shooting of 1999. The night started with champagne toasts and ended with 3 bystanders wounded and 1 budding rapper headed for a cell block. Shine, only 19, Belizean accent, Biggie S baritone, signed Bad Boy on a tidal wave of hype, then watched it all drown in sirens and flashing blue light. Diddy walked out of court that spring morning, waving to cameras like a victorious quarterback. We remember his crisp suit, his relieved grin, his not guilty echoing across syndicated talk shows. Shine, by contrast, was shackled and shuffled into a van, reporters shouting, "Why take the fall?" Years later, Shine would break his silence, accusing Combs of cold-blooded betrayal. He called witnesses to testify against me, Shine claimed, the words still crackling with hurt. We see him stepping off the deportation flight back to Belize, clutching a duffel bag lighter than his broken future. No platinum plaque, no 7-figure advance, just 10 years erased from his timeline and a haunting question. How many lives did Combs sacrifice to keep his empire spotless?
Watch them, bow, bow. Both of them fired, and the muzzle flash was like, psh, psh. Shine's muzzle flash was a little higher. He was on the side closest to the bar.
We trace Shine's road home. The bittersweet victory of turning prison bars into parliamentary benches. He rebuilt, rebranded, even found a measure of peace. But in interviews, he keeps circling the same wound. Everyone knew all along I was the scapegoat. We can't help imagining what might have happened if Shine possessed a flash drive of his own. Surveillance footage from that fateful night, text messages that contradicted courtroom testimonies, maybe even an off-the-record confession whispered into a limo intercom. Would he have served the same decade? Or would a different man be reminiscing about private jets while someone else stared at concrete walls?
We are back with Moses Shine Barrow, who served nearly 9 years in prison, stemming from that infamous nightclub shooting that changed his life forever. His co-defendant, Sean Combs, was acquitted.
The parallels between Kim and Shine sent a chill down our spine. Two souls from different corners of Combs' orbit, both claiming they were mapped, monitored, ultimately muted once they posed a threat. Kim sensed the walls listening. Shine felt the courtroom rigged. Each, in their own way, tried to warn the world. "He got me," Kim typed. "He hung me out to dry," Shine all but screamed. And still, year after year, the music kept spinning while those voices were reduced to footnote. We picture Combs reading the latest wave of lawsuits as he sits in a Brooklyn detention center, the empire he once commanded reduced to a handful of frantic phone calls and cryptic press statements. Do echoes of Kim's final texts keep him awake at night? Does Shine's voice, older now, measured, stepping to the podium in Belize's parliament, cut through the hum of fluorescent lights, or does the mogul brush it all away like dust on a platinum trophy, convinced the next lawyer, the next settlement, the next dazzling distraction will set him free?
Conversation. That point really stuck out. I never heard you say it,
Yeah.
that you were the fall guy.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I believe that, the power of Diddy, the entertainer, the person that dominated pop culture, was so loud for so long that no one heard myself and my mom and...
Remember that Lost memoir that shot to the top of Amazon within hours of Combs' indictment? Critics called it pulp, family called it fake, yet readers devoured every page looking for hidden truth amid the salacious prose. It chronicled alleged partner-swapping soirees, midnight flights to private islands, a cache of steamy recordings allegedly starring Hollywood royalty. The man who published it insists he received chunks of Kim's drive through a clandestine chain of insiders. True or not, the timing was explosive. Suddenly, the question wasn't just whether Kim predicted her own demise. It was whether her silenced testimony might finally roar across courtroom speakers, forcing jurors to confront the empire's darkest corners.
You know what I'm saying? Just with this cassie thing, I didn't know her, but I knew somebody like her, and that was Kim Porter. I didn't know Cassie, but I knew somebody who was going through the same thing she was going through, and that was Kim Porter.
Meanwhile, former bodyguard Gene Deal claims Kim once slashed Combs' wrist in self-defense with a corkscrew. Mark Curry swears Combs tampered with Kim's phone lines, eavesdropping on every conversation. Another ex-employee describes party bottles allegedly spiked to leave women real slippery. Each story drips with sensational detail, yet together they form a pattern too intricate to ignore. If even a fraction is true, then Kim's fear wasn't paranoia, it was self-preservation on borrowed time.
And it's like, it was the same thing Kim was going through. The same thing, bro. Kim was going through the same thing. The beatings, you know what I'm saying?
We find irony in Combs' public persona of Black excellence, an inspirational rags-to-riches blueprint. He told graduates to dream big, urged youths to participate in elections or face consequences, boasted that his family embodied super Black love. But what if that motivational soundtrack masked a backstage reality where promises were written in disappearing ink? We replay video clips of him kissing Kim on red carpets, calling her soulmate, only to learn from insiders that their mansion felt more like a gilded cage. We recall him hugging Shiny in studio photos, praising the young rapper's rawness, then sliding into separate limos the night the verdict came down.
Because Kim had took the cork, where you open up wine, the corkscrew. She took the corkscrew and caught him on his wrist defending himself, and I think I know he tore some ligaments, but he almost hit an artery or came close to the artery, or either scratched it or cut it a little bit, because he just kept bleeding.
We must ask ourselves, how many other names hover at the edges of this saga, half-remembered footnotes who vanished before sharing their story? There's Justin's mother, Misa, whose alleged altercations with Combs rarely make morning shows. There's Cassie, whose explosive lawsuit hinted at a decade of forced intimacy and control before settling out of court. There are anonymous suit plaintiffs, citing rooms stocked with crystal bottles and 1,000 miniature vials. If Kim Porter truly had footage of these evenings, did she also capture the faces of those yet to speak? Were they saved as innocuously titled folders? Project X Masquerade, Pool Night Raw Cuts, ready to implode reputations if ever leaked?
You know, he get trafficking because he took her to different states and had her perform acts with different, male and different people, sometimes against her will.
Back in Belize, Shine stands beneath tropical sun, parsing every headline, every filed affidavit. On one hand, he forgave Combs publicly. Politics requires diplomacy, after all. On the other, he reminds reporters that forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. We sense he's torn between relief that someone else is finally facing consequences and sorrow that it took so many ruined lives to get here. During a recent interview, he half smiled, half winced while reflecting on that Club New York verdict. If I had cooperated with the DA, Puff would have gone away. In other words, the man once loyal to a fault could have toppled the empire 25 years ago had he chosen self-preservation. Now the empire wobbles anyway, but the cost in human collateral feels immeasurable.
But that's Kim's story. That's Kim's book. That's Kim's book. Then you hear about the fact that he broke Kim's nose on a yacht?
Wow, I ain't hear about that.
Cut to the present, and Combs' own twins, Jesse and Delilah, are said to be house hunting with their late mother's best friend, desperate for normalcy while their father's legal walls close in. They scarcely glance at the indictment, insiders claim, unwilling to read what prosecutors allege their dad orchestrated. We picture teenage hearts torn between unconditional love and chilling allegations, just as Kim might have predicted in her unpublished pages. How do you process rumors that the man who tucks you in may have destroyed the person who gave you life?
He broke Kim, let's say allegedly, but it was told by people in her camp that he broke Kim's nose on a yacht. So Cassie's story is Kim's story. Cassie's book is Kim's book.
Is this a string of mind-boggling coincidences, or are we staring at the fingerprints of a master puppeteer? We keep hearing how acquaintances discovered hidden microphones tucked behind picture frames, how conversation-ending clicks echoed on landlines the moment his name was mentioned, how house staff learned to face away from certain security cameras because they felt those black domes could somehow read lips. Mark Curry, who once rapped side by side with the mogul, didn't mince words when he recalled the bad boy days. Anytime a man would go out his way to wiretap someone's phone, that's a sign of insanity. And if you believe Curry, the paranoia didn't stop there. He claims Combs personally curated party bottles, reserving separate stash for the women, elixirs allegedly laced to make the guests, in his words, real slippery.
Do I think, yeah. Every man possibly is capable. I think he's very capable of doing it. It's in his character. That's who he is. That's what comes with power. That's what comes with arrogance. That's what comes with, what makes him, power. That's just the selfishness to make you be like that.
We picture those A-list gatherings, smooth playlists, low lighting, waitstaff coached to address every guest as king or queen, while discreet bartenders whisked away half-full glasses the second someone looked elsewhere. Imagine the quiet dread of waking the next morning with blurred memories, realizing the host owned both the cameras and the keys to your future. How many hush texts started with "remember last night," followed by an NDA and an emoji wink? How many rising stars returned to studios on Monday, pretending they never felt the room tilt on Saturday?
It was all, insecurities. Anytime a man would go out his way to wiretap someone's phone or put taps in their homes just to monitor their conversation, that's a sign of insanity. So when you see someone doing that, you can imagine everything else they do.
Diddy's army of insiders, from chauffeurs to stylists, reportedly signed agreements thicker than a deluxe vinyl set. Anyone who objected risked vanishing from the guest list and from the charts. We're told a publicist who once asked too many questions found her phone buzzing with unknown numbers day and night until she simply resigned. Even veteran producers whispered that voice notes mysteriously disappeared from their cloud backups after mentioning his name. It paints a portrait of a kingdom where the crown was polished with charm while the dungeon buzzed with circuitry. But the stakes rose far beyond the studio when East Coast pride collided with West Coast fury. Dwayne "Keffy D. Davis, the street elder now awaiting trial for Shakur's fatal ambush, alleges Combs once dangled a bounty he was willing to pay millions, Keffy told detectives, if someone could erase Shakur and his hulking ally Suge Knight from the board. Prosecutors say Combs' name surfaced 47 times in that covert recording. 47. Picture a smoky hotel room where 90s hip-hop titans plotted charts and concerts. Then lean in to hear a whispered price tag floated over the hum of a mini-fridge. Was it bravado, desperation, or a calculated bid to outrun a diss track that threatened his throne?
Tupac had already attacked Orlando Anderson. They'd had a previous beef.
Now leap forward to those jaw-dropping federal raids on Combs' properties. Agents carted off hard drives, ledger books, entire desktop towers. Officially, they're chasing allegations of trafficking and racketeering. Yet retired FBI voices hint the warrants also cited historical gang activity. Read between the lines and you'll spot a very cold case, suddenly heating to a boil. Could the same surveillance that guarded his mansion also archive clues about that desert strip in Las Vegas? Is there a forgotten folder, maybe mislabeled tour itinerary, holding location pings or burner phone logs from '96?
All these years later, we finally find out that it was Orlando Anderson who pulled the trigger, Keffy D who gave him the gun and set it up, and P. Diddy who paid them. Done.
Law enforcement veterans insist modern forensic tools can unearth ghosts from obsolete devices, deleted texts, geotagged photos, even analog voicemails dumped onto external drives. One source swears the Bureau already flagged a pattern linking Combs' travel manifests to nights when rival artists were threatened or venues mysteriously canceled shows. We picture a task force board crisscrossed with yarn, Miami yacht parties, backstage outbursts in LA, that infamous lobby scuffle in Atlanta, all punctuated by sticky notes labeled settled, sealed, or witness recanted. Meanwhile, the civil docket reads like a parade of heartbreak. Cassie's lawsuit settled within a day, but packed with allegations of enforced intimacy and hotel hallway violence, ignited a domino effect. Producer Lil Rod claims Combs forced him to hire paid companions, then filmed the chaos for blackmail leverage. Jane Rowe, the niece-turned-nanny, says her pregnancy invitation letter morphed into a termination notice. Each new filing spotlights the same core ingredients: lavish perks, total obedience, and brutal consequences for saying no.
You know what I mean? It's between me and him, and only he knows. So every time he say it didn't happen, or that's the only thing that makes this become an issue.
We can't ignore the former Bad Boy roster either. Talents who once headlined summer anthems now recount unpaid royalties and phone calls that switched from family forever to ice-cold silence the moment they asked for audits. One singer confided to a podcaster that she felt mentally held hostage by clauses barring her from recording her own hits. Another rapper joked, half-heartedly, that suing Combs is like boxing a shadow, all you hit is air and legal bills. Yet the chorus grows louder as the court calendar thickens and the brand endorsements trickle away. Revolt TV, he stepped aside. Ciroc commercials, suspended. Reality show cameos, edited out before broadcast.
Diddy, Biggie, The Confessional, Part 3. Biggie and Tupac. Behind the scenes, lawyers strategize over who might testify first. Shine with his decade of resentment? Keffy D under oath repeating the bounty story for a jury? Or could an unnamed tech contractor finally crack, revealing he was paid overtime in 2012 to digitize a box labeled archival party footage that somewhere, somehow included raw clips from the 90s? The thought sends chills through every corridor of the industry. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Empires built on silence eventually echo with screams. We already watched Kim Porter's offspring issue a statement, begging the internet to remember their mom's smile, not the conspiracies. We've seen Cassie surveillance video surfacing, erasing years of denial in one savage frame. We've heard Shine, now an elected leader, admitting he wrestles with forgiveness, even as he shakes hands with dignitaries. Every new leak chips paint off the throne, revealing rust we never knew was there. It was like Tom and Jerry. It was like you could not separate these two.
If federal agents sift through those seized devices and find even a fraction of what insiders whisper, voice memos, plotting payouts, GPS trails lining up with drive-by locations, bank transfers routed through shell charities, the story of Sean Diddy Combs could pivot from entrepreneurial fairy tale to cautionary saga overnight. And should prosecutors decide to braid the trafficking counts with unsolved studio beefs and desert shootouts, we might witness the rare spectacle of pop culture royalty facing a courtroom soundtrack louder than any platinum single.
The whole East-West thing started. We were caught off guard.
And that broke my man's.
So we arrive at the edge of revelation, pulse racing, breath short. Lawsuits stack like dominoes, informants circle like vultures, and an empire once shielded by chart-topping hooks now trembles under subpoena weight. The only question left is brutally simple. If this is merely the opening crack in Diddy's fortress, how many more buried secrets are still clawing their way toward daylight? And whose stories will those secrets finally set free? Smash that subscribe, drop your hottest theory in the comments, and brace yourself, because the next headline might blow this saga wide open. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and we'll meet you in the shadows of the next scandal.